Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Another episode here, Banish the Doubt. Today's episode, I want to talk about where we came from, this part of us, or this most minute particle that made us who we are, that everything that emanated, that we came from, is a spark, is a piece of this universe, this field of energy out in the universe. This is where we emanated from. And I want to start it off with a quote from Max Planck. I've spoken about this quote in the past, but I feel it really bears repeating, especially in this video, because as we understand ourselves, we start to learn more about who we are. We start to really, and for myself, learning where we came from. See, have you ever thought about that, in your life, where's the hell did I come from? And did I come from my mom and dad? Where exactly did I, originate from? So I'm going to start it off with this quote and then kind of talk about some more. So Max Planck, for those of you who don't know, and that's probably everybody watching this video, unless you've seen my earlier videos, he was a scientist back in the early 20th century. And he, along with Einstein, at the time, were considered the greatest scientific minds on the planet. And Max Planck, he received the Nobel Prize for his study of the atom. And while he was in Stockholm, this is part of his acceptance speech. This is what he said about his study of the atom. He said, "As a man who has devoted his whole entire life to the study of matter, I can tell you as my result of my research about the atom this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originally originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of an atom together." Now listen to this. We must assume then, now this is the greatest scientific mind on the planet at the time saying this, behind this force, the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. And this is what I'm talking about. This is where we came from. See, most of our lives, and most of us are watching this video here, grew up learning in science about Newtonian physics, the Newtonian atom. This is my depiction of an atom I learned from Dr. Bruce Lipton. But here is quantum physics, quantum atom. Okay? It's blank. There's nothing there. Because that's who you and I are at our core. We are energy. That's all we are. We've come from this energy field. The particle that you and I emanated from, scientists have said that we could get these particles that you and I came from, 1 billion of them, 1 billion on the head of a pin. And that may even be conservative. But inside this particle, this most minute particle in the universe, was the color of our hair, the shape of their eye, the color of our skin. Everything there is inside this little minute particle. So if that's there, then why can't what you and I can become? Why can't that also be there? And now I'm going to transition into this genie in our minds that I want to talk about, because inside this mind, this is what the Bible talked about. People have taken the Bible interpretations too literal. The church has taken this way, too literal. It talks about this in symbolism. And you've heard me in previous videos, and if you haven't, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, you want to go hit the subscribe button and go watch some of my earlier videos in the last couple of weeks about the pineal gland and the pituitary gland and the area in between. How this is that sort of that area of our brain really makes up exactly how you and I operate. How we have a higher mind and a lower mind, a higher consciousness and a lower consciousness. And when we're operating in a competitive nature, when we're worried about what other people think of us, what we have, that our clothes, the way our hair looks is really, how other people are going to appreciate us or not. We are operating in this lower consciousness. I'm talking about going into and operating from a higher consciousness, one that sees the world as we're all interconnected. So the lower consciousness sees a world separate, that you and I are separate from each other, that those people over there are separate from us. And a lot of this thinking really was fundamentally and foundationally laid, sort of like an operating system, downloaded into this brain, into our brains, as from little children, from as we're an infant. So when we're first born, the conscious mind has not formed yet. That's why you and I cannot recall anything in our life, say from 6 months old or 1 year old. Whenever we talk about when we were children, we always go back to about 5 years old, maybe 4 years old, 7 years old, because that's when our conscious mind started to develop. We could start notice mom and notice dad, and if we had siblings, noticing them in the surroundings. But those most formative years from 0 through age 7 is where everything was downloaded into us. So if mom and dad saw a world where people were separate from them, then you and I foundationally were we operated from this foundation, from this operating system of those people are different than me. It could be no other way, because this is what we observed. This was our minds. Like I'm recording the video right now, our minds were we pressed a record button when we came into this world, and we just watched mom and dad, and we learned all of that. But we didn't come from, that's not that. This is where we came from, is this energetic field where everything is perfect. Nature is perfect. The animals are perfect. Everything operates on this sort of a time clock, if you will. There was I believe it's an ancient saying that goes something along the lines of, after all these years, the sun has never said to the earth, you owe me. But isn't that how you and I operate? Not specifically maybe you and I, but how the world operates, right? Think about that for a second. And I would like for you to think about the trees and the plants and the animals. There was I forget the gentleman's name, but he was around the same time, the early 20th century. And he said something, and I may not have this quote exactly right, and I will, if I don't get it exactly right, I will find it and I will bring it to in a video coming up. But he said something along the lines of this. He said, in the springtime, go and observe the blossoms on the tree, on the fruit trees. Okay? He said, and you will notice that the blossoms fall off naturally as the fruit grows inside. And I believe I have that quote pretty well down. I'm going to double check it, but in any extent, I would like for you to understand this. The fruit within you and I is our higher consciousness taking over and removing the lower consciousness. As we start to become more in tune to who we truly are, this spark, okay, this intelligence that is behind us, that is this higher mind thinking, the blossom starts to fall off. Because I would like for you to think of yourself and others as we are all interconnected. What was the other saying? But for the grace of God, there go I. So we start to look at life through a different prism, through a different filter. We start to, as we get more and more into this, we start to notice other people. We start to see in them maybe somebody who we used to be, or somebody who we don't want to be anymore. So I want to start to transition here into from what the Bible talks about and so inner workingly, if you will, how we operate. So this genie in our mind that I have up here is this place in our mind that I call it the genie, but it's kind of like our higher mind. And in there, it has all our wishes and desires. They're already there. It's sort of been collected. And the higher mind is sort of holding on to this until we almost find the key and unlock it. So I'm not sure. You can probably see this. It's getting kind of dark. If I turn the light on above this, you wouldn't be able to see the board. So hopefully you can still see this. But where my hand is, oh, look at that. Great. 10% I have here. That 10% is the part of the brain that we operate out of. That I call that garbage dump. It's all the stuff. It's the ego. It's the worrying what other people say. It's gossiping. It is living our life based off of what external world. The external world controls me. The other side, promised land I have here. This is the area where the genie sort of resides. That's the area where we can tap into, and then we can start to recognize and understand that the other stuff doesn't really matter. It is talking about this spark of where you and I came from, this source energy that is part of each and every one of us. The connecting link to that source energy, that connection gets corroded over our lifetime. And too many times it takes a traumatic event, happenstance, a disease or something for us to realize, wait a minute, I don't want to live here anymore. This is not really, it's not conducive. I'm understanding that this is the place that I always should have been in, or we have the opportunity to be in. So there's an area within our brain. Now I would like for you to also think of this. If you were a neuroscientist, okay, and you were able to open up your brain and look inside, you're going to see all the inner workings of the brain, the electrical connections, all that stuff. I don't know it because I'm not a neuroscientist, but thinking of that's the stuff that's going to be in there, the right and left hemisphere of our brain. And by the way, this is where Jesus and the Bible talked about go to the right side, the right hemisphere, where the promised land is, okay? But if we're inside the brain, I would like for you to think of looking at it and what you're seeing. Okay, what comes to mind, no pun intended, but what you're seeing. Now I would like for you to think, where in that brain are you going to find one frustration, one worry, one anxious thought, one fearful thought, one doubtful thought? Where are they inside the brain? They're not there. It's inside the mind, but you can't find it. It's not there. It's part of this 10% of the brain of how we've been led to believe and live. I go back to what I was saying about earlier in this video about how we were programmed. We were programmed by people who had not, I'm not blaming, we're not judging, but people who lived very much right with fearful thoughts, doubt, anxiety, worry, separation anxiety, whatever it may be. And those energies we downloaded into us, into our brains. And this is how we live our life. This is why you see people on a highway driving 90, 100 miles an hour in a 65 mile an hour zone. This is why. Because we're operating from that fearful energetic level, that the energy of fear and anxiety and doubt and frustration and anger. Okay, so now also within inside this brain, in the middle of the brain, is this area called the colostrum. Okay, now the colostrum in that middle section of the brain is where the Bible talked about if when anything flows into the pituitary gland that forms from the colostrum into pituitary, the Bible talks about how this is where it talks about milk and honey. And so the Bible said it's the land of milk and honey. You may remember that from religion or what have you. Well, if anything forms from into the pituitary gland from the colostrum, that is a white substance. It's also, as we call mother's milk, is what we call colostrum. And so that's the pituitary gland. Anything that forms in the pineal gland is golden honey. Is this form, this golden substance. So there's what the Bible talked about, the land of milk and honey. And then out of the land of bondage, the Bible talks about rising out of this land of bondage into the land of milk and honey. So going up into the brain, into that promised land, into that right hemisphere of our brain, meditating, going to the single eye, the third eye, the single eye that Jesus talked about in all the disciples. The single eye, if the single eye be open, we go there, that's where everything exists. So he was referring to the pineal gland. Now, the ancients talked about this coming from above, coming from high above, the holy clause, the saint clause, the gift of light coming from above, come above, high above. They refer to as the ancients. The holy clause, Saint Claus, or as we understand it today, Santa Claus. This is where it comes from. The bringing gifts of light from the North Pole, from above. This is what the Bible is talking about, and this is, again, symbolically, what they're talking about is the gifts of our higher mind, the area where our desires and our dreams and our wishes exist. That's where they live, in the higher mind. Now, going back to source energy and that connecting link between us and source energy, the connecting link gets corroded the longer and the majority of our life that we spend in this 10% of our brain, in that ego area of our brain. As we start to, the the bloom starts to fall off and the fruit starts to grow, we start to shed this ego, this part of us that says, I am what I have. The part that says, I am who I know and who knows me. The part that says, I am my job, what I do for a living, the title that I have, the letters after my name. You see where I'm getting with this? That's all ego. Who we truly are, when we tap in to this source energy inside of us, we transcend, we go above, we go higher, we go to that higher mind, we go to that higher consciousness where we say, as I tap into that, in other forms of ways of thinking, ancients talked about the 7 chakras in our body. The 3 here being the body, being the mind, the 3 above, the pineal gland, the mind up here, and then the 3 down below being the body. So you have the mind and the body, but in the middle, the 7th in the middle is the heart. And as the mind and the body start to connect, as we start to control the body, okay? You maybe see me talk about this in previous videos. Actually, I think my last video, as we start to learn that our environment controls how we think and feel. Okay, so how we think and feel, our bodies become conditioned over time, right? So we think a thought of fear, and we have a fearful thought. Okay, so we in this vicious circle. Okay, the world, again, going back, how we were born, right? Who raised us? The world has conditioned us, right? Thinking, observing, recording, to believe that external achievements can give us what we truly desire. The letters after our name, who we know, the job we have, the car, the house we live, the neighborhood we live in, all those external achievements, they're fine, but it's not who defines you. So as we start to then align our thoughts and our desires, our mind and our body, it's when in those moments we can say, wait a minute, what I'm doing here, I can just what? I can feel. It feels different. There's something about this. It's speaking to my heart, the middle, because now you're aligned in your body, you're feeling this, you're getting this energetic connection. When I'm making videos, when I'm doing research, when I'm watching certain videos, I can just feel this connection. It is aligned. There's an alignment there. Just yesterday, I was jumping one of my cars, the two cars. I had the one car that had the jumper cables, right? So here, the one car, I put the cables on this, nothing. When I made that connection to the other car and I turned the car on, bang, the battery, it sparked and the car turned on. Our bodies turn on. We understand, we have that feeling. We have that feeling when our mind and bodies are aligned when we fall in love. When we meet our spouse for the first time, we meet that person, there's that feeling. And then suddenly, nothing else matters. We're no longer worrying about anything. Everything's just sort of like the flowers, right? Blossoming. We live like that. We are living heaven on earth. So that's what I'm talking about. The genie in our mind is that higher mind that has all those wishes and desires and dreams in there. They've been there. You know they're there when you feel it, when you're doing whatever it is you're called to do. And if you're having trouble maybe tapping into that or understanding that or being able to tap into how to do that, you can go ahead and click on the link in my channel here, and I'd be happy to work with you one-on-one in coaching. But I would tell you though, this is how, when we quiet the mind and we sit and we meditate, is what the Bible has talked about for thousands of years. And ancients around, even before the times of the Bible, talked about this. That's when we know, and we want to stick to that as many times as we can throughout our day. Become mindful of how we're thinking. Are we thinking from the lower consciousness or the higher consciousness? And anytime we're in the lower consciousness, and we can recognize that, that's a victory. And we stop, we realize it, and we say, okay, I'm going to change my thinking. I'm going to start to get back to that holistic, that connected thinking, back to that person that I know who I am. It's in my higher mind. I want to make that connection. Go back to, like they said in the Bible, the land of milk and honey, the promised land, that side of our brain that has that. So this is what I want to talk about today, the genie in the bottle. It's genie in our mind, but kind of like the genie in the bottle. But we can tap into it, and this is how we do it. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you'd like any help with any of this, feel free to click on my link. I'll be happy to work with you and coach you and teach you what I've learned. If you haven't already, click on the subscribe button and check on the other videos that I have. And if you'd like to go ahead and please share this video, because as I've always said, the more people that see these types of videos, not just mine, but others on YouTube as well, the healthier we can become and help the planet. We can heal the planet, help to heal more and more people. The more we do this, the better the planet is for it. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you the next time.